Part 2, Chapter 9 recap. The Real Brotherhood. Goldstein, the leader of the Brotherhood, wrote out a record of history and a plan for revolt. That book is dropped on the ground next to Winston during a hate festival. The festival, side note, the festival shows the confusion of the times Winston is living in. After all, there had been many books and movies made about Oceania, which is where Winston lives, and East Asia being allies together in a war against Eurasia. During the festival, the whole history changed literally while the speaker was talking on stage. All of the work ever done to show the alliance between East Asia and Oceania needed to be erased. This is literally changing history in front of Winston's eyes. And at just that moment, a book of the real history is dropped next to Winston. That book describes the world before it was split up into three superpowers. The 20th century, January 1st, 1901 to December 31st, 2000. Shortly after the 20th century, Russia absorbed Europe. The United States absorbed the British Empire. That was two of the three superstates right there, already taking shape, Eurasia and Oceania. The third, East Asia, coming into existence only after another 10 years of confused fighting. Once all three are formed, war is constantly perpetuated, wherein the states win small pieces of the border back from each other, never really moving the lines by any significant amount. Goldstein describes in this book Winston is reading, the war and history has been perpetuated for the last 25 years, and bam, now we have a time frame. And keep in mind, this book was written in 1949. And he's saying shortly after the 20th century, so 25 years later, which would be 2025. Goldstein is also saying these wars have never really done anything to benefit any of the populations. They only benefit the controllers or the machine. The war's only purpose is to perpetuate the world that has been constructed for everyone to live in. The war hysteria is continuous and universal in all countries. Everybody's afraid. It's for their control. Goldstein is basically saying acts like raping, looting, slaughter of children, the reduction of whole populations to slavery, public torture is all looked at as normal, as long as it's happening to the other side. And that's what he's describing in this book Winston is reading. Also, for the most part, the population is never really aware of soldiers moving in Winston's world. It's all done like at the borders. The enemy is presented to the people in different ways, like helicopters and machines might come in and move people around physically, sometimes as scare tactic to keep everyone in line, or simply if they discover a person is trying to start a revolution, they could easily publicly label that person as a spy, and then he would be ripped into pieces by the people he was trying to save, by the public. All three superstates are basically undefeatable and evenly matched. All have the same technology, all are completely self-sustainable, and none can be defeated by one or even a combination of two. And Ronnie, listen to this part. Goldstein says, around the poles, all three territories lay claim to enormous amounts of land, all mostly uninhabited and unexplored, right around the poles. Goldstein is explaining in this part of the book all of the wars, how they are used and why they're used. We can learn about the controllers at the very top of Winston's world and how they control the people under them. Winston is learning the rate of speed at which the 20th century was accelerating could not be sustained, and due to a bunch of revolutions and fighting, this is the way the world ended up. In effect, the machine, as they call it in the book, had successfully eliminated, for the most part, all agriculture, all inventions, all innovation, and pretty much all freedom and liberty from every society around the world. This whole chapter is about Winston finding that book and reading it. He can't stop reading it. The whole book is basically the book you had the idea to make, or course as you like to call it. It's describing to Winston in detail the entire machine, all of the pieces and inner workings of the machine. All of the hidden information becomes available to Winston, and he can't stop reading it. Goldstein is saying all three countries have three different philosophies for their people, but they are barely distinguishable from another, and no one from the other countries are allowed to know each other's philosophies. Instead, they're told that the other cultures are an abomination and they're to be treated as such. And the chapter ends with the understanding that true history has been erased and the past is whatever the party says it is. And Winston is still reading the book.